Thank you, Trace, very much. Neil Cavuto here at the Capitol, where it looks like Senator Ted Cruz made a statement, but he probably did very little to change the defunding health care map and the math behind it. Right now, it's looking like we've got 30 hours of debate on some pieces of legislation that will effectively mean that the Senate punts it right back to the House and leaves it in the House's hands as to how they get through this. But the reason why, partly why stocks turned south today, had in part growing fears that we could be seeing a shutdown, if even a limited one. Remember, if they do not resolve this by October 1 next week, then all bets are off and a possible shutdown is in the making. It would be the 19th such shutdown since the late 1970s. But of course, shutdowns began to be the more regular du jour, if you will, post the 1995 shutdown. Now, a shutdown in and of itself does not mean the end of the world. It's how long it lasts and how much is affected. Right now, most who I talk to say that can be averted. Let's talk a little bit about what Senator Cruz did today. Most say that he really did not move, as I said, the needle on this idea of defunding the health care law, even gutting it, but that he did awaken people's attention to it. Was that a good or a bad thing? Hard to say, because both Democrats and Republicans, including John McCain, who will be with me later in this show, have been questioning his strategy, if not bashing some of the stuff that he said. More on that later. To a fellow who at least sympathizes with what the good senator was trying to do, his colleague and friend David Vitter from the fine state of Louisiana. Senator, the 21 hours plus where he was going on and on, it proved to me that he would make a darn good TV anchor. But it also showed that he has great lung capacity. But did anything come of it?
I think something did. I think it absolutely focused debate and discussion in a positive way. I think it may have moved some votes. I'm not predicting that Harry Reid's plan to strip the defund provision out won't happen in the Harry Reid Senate, but I think he may have moved some votes.
Well, where are we now, Senator? Now we're in the point where there's a debate stage here about that.
Yeah, we're debating the bill. The big vote is the so-called cloture vote, which at this point will be Friday. And then if cloture passes, Harry Reid will get his select amendments, which would take the defund provisions out, and then he'd try to pass the bill. There's also
then is it up or down on a bill that would go back to the House, presumably with just keeping the government funded for another few months, but without that health care?
If Harry Reid gets his way, absolutely.
All right. Now, I've heard from a number of Democrats who were telling me earlier that Cruz really didn't help his cause much because he has delayed that and put the onus on John Boehner to move fast, because this is going to get to him later than normal. What's the truth on that?
Well, first of all, there's still a possibility of our constricting the time somewhat. Secondly, I think the House
What do you mean, not subscribing to the 30-hour rule and all?
Correct, yeah. Secondly, I think the House still could have time to send something different back, particularly if they sent along with it a very short-term, like 1-week clean CR, so there would be no disruption as the longer-term bill was discussed.
What is a clean CR?
Just pure funding without any of the controversial stuff.
But that's sort of like, you know,
putting more time on the clock. Putting more time on the clock as we discuss these other significant issues.
All right. Markets were fearing a possible shutdown, albeit even a limited one. Do they have reason to fear?
I don't think that's going to happen, particularly because of what I'm talking about. The House, if it does, sends anything back, I think they would probably send with it a very short-term clean CR to avoid any disruptions, my guess.
What is your best guess as to what they do with health care, that if they're not going to kill it outright, maybe delay key provisions?
Well, first of all, I don't know. I'll tell you what I've been pushing for, which is under serious consideration. Put in the CR two things. First of all, no Washington exemption language that I've been pushing, so that Washington is treated the same as the rest of America. Secondly, a 1-year delay.
When you say Washington's treated the same, you mean that Congress would eat its own health care cooking? Came up with this, go ahead and make it.
Would actually follow the law, God forbid. We would go to the exchange, which is mandated in the law. We would not get a big fat taxpayer subsidy, which is nowhere in the law, made up out of thin air by this Obama rule. So we would actually follow the law. My language also would include the president, the vice president, and their political appointees. So I've been pushing to put that in a CR with a 1-year delay. That would actually create an incentive, because the 1-year delay would also delay that. An incentive for Democrats to look seriously at a 1-year delay, particularly since I think it's growing consensus that this is not ready for prime time. Like it or hate it, this is not ready for October.